Amen. And praise Abba, I got exactly what I hoped to get done today finished. So it's only the top part, but that's as far as I thought we'd get anyway. So I feel good about that anyway. That's good. All right, so this is hopefully just clarifying more and more and more a big issue that you're going to have every time you talk to people coming out of the mainstream. Because every time you talk about this, they're going to say and they're going to believe and they're going to filter that you're teaching or believing a salvation that's works-based. And salvation is not works-based. There's no connection whatsoever between works and salvation being available. Now, reward, everlasting life is not salvation. Everlasting life is a reward that's available to you because of salvation if you do the works. Works gets the reward or the punishment. Salvation makes the reward possible. It's not really complicated, but it's going to be hard because every time people hear me teach this, and they'll hear you say the same thing, they're going to say, oh, you believe in salvation by works. No. And it doesn't matter how many times I say that. I'm still going to get misquoted. It doesn't matter. Because they have been taught, brainwashed, indoctrinated, whatever word you want to use, to believe that salvation equals everlasting life. That if you have salvation, you have everlasting life. And therefore, since he gave us salvation, we all have everlasting life. By the way, by the definition, that definition, there's no point in doing any of this. Everybody's in. If the definition is salvation gives you everlasting life, well, he died once for everybody. Well, then everybody's in. Now, we all know that's not true. Every Christian knows that's not true. That not everybody's in. So what differentiates between who's in and who's not? Belief. How do we know what they believe? By what they do. It's so simple. So logical, rational, makes total sense, reasonable. This is the way we act with other people, by the way. We treat our children, we treat our employees with a works-based reward system. A works-based punishment system. It's no different. We understand that to differentiate between people, we must look at what they do. So when Abba's looking to say who gets in, who doesn't get in, what's he looking at? Your choices. That's why the teaching was so important. Making decisions is the whole reason you're here. Making decisions is the reason you exist. You exist to show your belief through your decision making. The choices you make is everything. Doesn't change whether or not salvation was available to you. Every one of us has the possibility, the potential to live forever. From the minute we took our first breath, that possibility was available because of what Yeshua did. That is huge. There's nothing bigger. But in your life, as big as that is, there's something that is bigger. What are you going to do with it? Because that's the reality of your life. What he did is already done. It's already there. So now the big question is, what are you going to do with it? There's the parable of the talents. What are you going to do with it? Do you appreciate it? Are you going to do anything, make an effort with it? That's what it's all about. So this is what we call the afterburn. I already started preemptively by giving a little additional stuff there. So if you have a comment or question, you can raise your hand. DeWeed's got the mic. Robert's in the back on the admin desk, monitoring for people there. So if you have a comment or question on the teaching up to this point, feel free to go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, we got a hand up here in the front.
I was wondering in James 14 and 15, does this just include people in the camp, or like you see people on the side of the road all the time and you see them repetitively out, begging for food and funds and stuff?
Okay, so you're talking about chapter 2, verse 14. Right?
Yes.
Okay, so what does it say there in the verse? It says, when you see a brother or sister. All right, so now we're in a whole different place now. Brother or sister is not just everybody on the planet. Just because they're human beings doesn't make them your brother or your sister. Okay, brother and sister is a relationship. And so James is talking about a relationship. If you see a brother or sister, that doesn't mean we don't also have compassion on those outside of the body. He's talking about a problem inside the body. Because he starts that off here. He says, my brothers, do not hold your belief of the master with partiality. If there should come into your meeting a man, if there's somebody in the body coming into your sphere of influence. So then he says, now he's taking it into, he says, that's bad enough the way you treat a guest or someone who comes into your meetings, but what about how you treat a brother or sister who's part of your body? And so, yes, we do have a first and foremost responsibility for those who are in the body, those who are, we would consider a brother or sister. And then additionally, when we see others. But when we see others, there's not the opportunity, although it's not mentioned here, the opportunity then to figure out what the problem is and fix the problem, unless they're going to be open to hearing about it. But your brother, if he's a brother or sister within the body, should be willing to hear from a scriptural point of view how to deal with their problem. Person outside on the street, maybe not so much.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay? So please do not ever read that I think we shouldn't be merciful and compassionate on those outside the body. Problem is, we're not even doing it for those inside the body. And if you're doing it for those outside and not inside the body, well, shame on you for not doing it for those inside, but doing it for those outside.
I just wanted to say, generally speaking, that, or give you permission if you want to say it from your perspective, what was done for me when I first came to this, because I wasn't actually in the best place either. And by comparison, where I'm at now, if you wanted to speak on that, to give an example.
No, you can go ahead if you want to explain.
Okay, because so basically, when I first came here, I and my family, because of reasons that are in my family that are not necessarily to be discussed, I had to leave my family and where I lived. I basically didn't have much of anything. I had a job, but I ended up losing it not a month later after that. And so I was basically without a place and without any form of being able to bring in money for myself. And so this man, with the benefit that the congregation has given to the ministry for benevolence, helped me in many ways. But I messed up. Not just once, I think, but maybe more than once. And he took me to task over it. He literally took me to task over it and made me know that this is not acceptable. You have to get up, dust yourself off. Yeah, you fell, but you need to get up and move. And so he did that with me. And now I had opened myself up for discipleship, so I don't know how much that influenced what he did with me or not, but the point is that I was receiving benefit from the congregation, and he was on to me that you need to do what you need to do with this and make sure you're not wasting it. And so that's the difference in what he's talking about when you see a brother or sister. He saw me, knew that I needed help, and had a relationship with me. That's the other thing, too. This is people that you have relationship. That automatically means that you need to be investigating what's going on with your brother and sister. Otherwise, you don't really know what's going on in their life.
Right.
You can't be antisocial with the body.
Right. Okay, let me kind of put this out there for sort of some clarity. First of all, none, have experienced what David got out of my mouth that day. So if any of you think that I'm harsh and I'm mean and I'm this and I'm that, nobody got what he got from me that day, including the clarity that if he didn't do what I said, I was going to show up and basically throttle him bodily. Okay? And that's not an insult to David. It's just, and that's not necessarily, that was my flesh a little bit too there. I was like, no, look, this is the servant who was given the one. He was basically doing nothing with it and squandering it, and I didn't know until that day that that was the case. And when I found out that was the case, I told him, now here's what I want you to get out of this, though. He could have curled up into a ball and just, quit on everything. And when I hung up the phone, there was a 50-50 shot. I looked at Robert and said, I don't know, there's about a 50-50 shot right now that he's curled up in a ball or he's going to get up and do what I told him to do. And he got up and did. Now, so you can see the difference is that from that moment forward, because he didn't get offended and didn't get upset, and Rabbi yelled at me, and I yelled at him, trust me. Okay? And
he did.
Okay?
And I appreciated every moment of it.
Okay, and it was not pretty, but he deserved every bit of it, but that's not the point. He knew he did, and he owned it. He wore it, he owned it, and he didn't point the finger and just get all mad and depressed and everything else. But since that moment, going forward, because of that strength in the relationship and that unyielding of saying this is acceptable and just go keep being being whatever. There was a lot of laziness and other things going on there. He's now industrious. He has a job. He has a car. And, he's paying half of rent on an apartment. I mean, he's on a house. I mean, there's been an incredible, and I'm not taking credit for that. I'm giving him the credit for that, how he received the chastisement. Because he could have quit. And I really wouldn't have been surprised if he did. There was, in my mind, because I didn't know him well enough, there was a good shot. It could have gone either way. But I also knew that what he needed to hear is what he needed to hear. Because if I wasn't that strong, he would have done nothing either way. At least this gave it a 50-50 shot. That his fear of me as his mentor, because I made it very clear, if this doesn't happen, I will be taking you out of where I put you. I put him in a by-the-week apartment, at least temporarily, and I will be throwing you out of there, and I will come over there, and I'm going to throw you around the room. Okay? And he believed me. Well, I was telling the truth. I would have done it. Okay? It was not an idle threat. But that was what he needed. Okay? And so please, some of you, when I am strong with you, I've never been even close to that strong. But that was a life-changing moment, and a man that was really about to completely implode his life to the point where he was never going to dig out of it. And so sometimes you have to be strong. But realize it was a good and trustworthy servant moment where he was actually doing nothing with it. We had given him an opportunity, and he was squandering it. And ultimately, he didn't. He got it all turned around and got it all worked out. And I couldn't be more proud of anybody that I've ever worked with as I'm proud of him. He's not there yet. Oh, but he's come such a long way. Okay, and we should all be and you've all seen it. You've all noticed the changes and the development and the growth in the man, okay? All right? And so that's the body, okay, being a body. I could have just thrown money at him. I could have just, as a matter of fact, I'll take some of the blame because we did kind of throw money at him. I put him in a hotel for a week, and I didn't check on him to make sure he was doing what I told him to do. So I let it go a week, only to find out, or however long it was, a little over a week probably. That was my fault, did not check up. Because I had expectations, and I didn't do my responsibility to be on top of it. Yes?
But after that, there was an almost like daily thing that Robert and I were doing back and forth. What are you doing today? Okay, I'm doing this, and I'm doing this.
Well, that's because we imposed that afterwards.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, and we probably should have done more of that from the beginning, but I'm just saying is, just take that as a good lesson, only because he brought it up and wanted to allow himself to be an example for you guys. But also, I just wanted you to all hear that, because a lot of you, I've just had a tone of voice you didn't like, and I didn't even say anything harsh, and you got all upset and crumble up into a ball. This was not a tone of voice. This was a blasting, okay? But the man, he needed it, took it, and he's now where he is because of it. You know what? Read Scripture. Abba does quite a bit of blasting. Are you going to receive it the right way, though? Messiah does some pretty good blasting himself. So does Paul. He goes to the Galatians, you idiots, you fools, what are you doing? That's some pretty strong language. I'm sure he didn't just go, oh, you stupid Galatians, oh, you fool. No, he was angry. You read Galatians, he was mad. Okay, that is an angry letter from a guy who's not happy. He's not happy and angry and etc. He's blasting them. That happens a little bit. Yahweh says, you worm, Jacob, you maggots. What's wrong with you? I'm holding your hand and you still act like, like this wormy, spineless maggots. That's pretty strong. That's in Isaiah. Okay, we have to really understand. So that's part of the whole system here, is that we have to learn not to run away, but to embrace. That doesn't mean that every time someone's blasting away, they're not wrong. I lose my temper. That's one of my problems. Okay? And so I probably could have handled it better, but as it turned out, it worked well. That doesn't encourage me that I need to be blasting everybody. Okay? I need to have a control over that, etc. However, I just wanted to use the example for you who think you've gotten blasted. Trust me, you haven't gotten blasted. Okay? I do not do to everybody what happened to him that one day. But I lost my temper. I was so disappointed, so frustrated, and so upset with him because of the opportunity that was given. Okay? But he understood and received it the right way. He knew he had disappointed, and he had received and done nothing with it. And now he could have quit. Matter of fact, other times in his life he did. He would have rolled up in a ball and quit. Okay? And then went and lived on nothing in the woods or something. But in this time, he said, no, I'm going to get myself out of bed, stand up, and do what Rabbi just told me to do. And look at the fruit. Daweed?
One final thing. It was Rabbi, as the leader of the congregation, that did all this, but I have to give credit to where credit was due. It was not just Rabbi also. I had submitted myself to the encouragement and counsel of both Robert and Rabbi Tom, and also David Hayes on the financial side more so. So everything has been, it's been the body in general that's been helping me out too.
Right. And just to clarify that, so after he picked himself up, he then chose to add these other elements as accountabilities to get him where he needed to go. Okay? So this is where he started to realize, you know what? Doing what I've been doing isn't working very well. I need to do something different. I need to involve different people in my life. And so he's developed that relationship as he's been adding people into his life. Good testimony to help people understand what this is all about. And so now, but based on his belief, and his belief was that I was the one to mentor him, that he was to come under that covering. And because of that belief, he received even the blasting and the harsh words and everything the right way, and it started to bear fruit because of his belief. And belief ended up bearing the fruit because of the works. And so really it all comes back to that whole belief thing again, okay? It comes out to the whole belief thing again. Rabbi Tom?
Thank you. If I may say this, you said, Rabbi, that no one here has been the recipient of your blasting like David was. But I'd like to say that many of us, if not most of us here, have been the recipient, and I'm not trying to like falsely build you up or anything, but most of us here have been the recipient of your compassion and your empathy and your kindness when it's needed. And for that, maybe I could speak for the congregation. We'd like to thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot because I don't get to hear that a lot. People are much more quick to talk about the more caustic things that I do than the gentleness that sometimes is there when necessary. I mean, a lot of you have received the compassion and the gentleness and the encouragement and the love from the other side around. So thank you for those words, Rabbi Tom. Appreciate them a lot. Okay, Zarek?
Just continuing on with the theme. When I came back to this, I did do more of the listening, so I didn't get quite as much of the blasting. But before that, when I had my dad, the other side of blasting, we grew up raised in a home of not knowing what this movement was, but encouragement from my dad to, if you don't understand something that the pastor's saying, realize he is a man. He might not have it right, but he's probably been studying it longer than you have, so go back into Scripture, find it, read it, come back, ask questions, get the understanding, go back and forth. And if it still doesn't add up to what you're seeing in Scripture, then go look for something that's adding up to what you're seeing in Scripture, not what you feel is the right thing to do.
Right.
And the few times I didn't listen, my version of the blasting from my dad's side was more of a military-based one. He said, okay, it's come down to this. You can do this, or there's the door. Get out. You're still my son, but if you're going to go down that way, I have to protect my family too. So there's the door. You can come back in it when you're not doing what you're doing. And so that being said, it's much better to just listen to it. And there was a few times I did say, okay, fine. I went out the door and got my own place, was doing, not during my wayward walk phase before I found this, because I had gotten fed up with the church. And my dad was like, I get it. I was there for the situation. It was completely wrong, but you're not handling it the way you should, the way I raised you to. And I said, okay, fine. There's the door. I'm going out of it. And where it was worldly-wise a fun, new experience, very quickly learned that it has a lot of bad repercussions that you don't want. Where I used to be in really good, excellent shape and mentally strong, it's taken about 5-6 years to come back from 2 or 3 years of breaking it down. And I'm still not at the level that I was
Right.
before I did that, anywhere near it. But
Amen. Thanks for sharing that. You know, we all have to start from the place of, you know, we almost have to do like Messianics Anonymous. Hi, my name is, and I don't know as much as I think I know. Because you don't know what you don't know yet. And so when he was at that younger age, and we all did that, you know, we all think when we're younger, okay, that's excusable. We don't know. Guess what? You could be any age and still not realize how much you don't know. But that's what he had to go out and experience to realize, you know what? I didn't know certain things and I didn't see it because I couldn't see it yet. Dad saw it because he's older and he knows these things and he's had experience, but I didn't know it. And so that's also why ministry's around, because we may know certain things that you don't know because we've been around the block a little longer in terms of this type of thing and understand where that may lead scripturally and where the life ramifications of choices are and that kind of stuff. Now, I couldn't say that quite as much when I was, 35 years old starting all this, or so, 37, 38, whatever it was when I first started ministry. But now, going to be 55 in a couple of weeks, I've seen a lot more, okay? And I've counseled a lot more, and I've gotten a lot more empirical data from people's lives of how this works and doesn't work and what happens when people listen and don't listen and when they make their self-sovereign choices versus letting him rule in their lives. I've seen it for, almost 18 years now. That's a long time compared to when I'd only been doing this for a few minutes. So, we have to, that's why we tell you to vet. If you don't do the vetting, then what's going to happen? You're just going to have either leadership that you never trust, never believe in, and just do whatever you want, or you're going to follow somebody who's going to lead you in the wrong place. But if you do the vetting, you have an opportunity to find someone you could then submit to and trust and honor in the right roles, like someone. We have a lot of really great guys in this group. I would feel very comfortable for anybody to be working with Robert or Rabbi Tom, okay, in terms of their leadership ability and ability to counsel and their ability, I know, to redirect you to me when they're supposed to, okay? Well, that's a big part of it, too. Because some of you want to be in those roles, but are you able to know the limitations of what you should be doing or passing on to somebody else? When do you send somebody up the line instead of trying to do it yourself? And they're both excellent at that, okay? We have other guys that don't have titles yet that are also becoming excellent at that, and they'll eventually, be recognized with as a shamish or an elder or whatever it might be, okay? But I'm just naming those two because they already have the positions officially within the body. But that's a blessing. I did this for a long time by myself. Didn't have anybody I could really trust to point to anybody to know that they can handle. And Robert does handle a lot of the stuff, and so does Rabbi Tom. They get a lot of people that call them and talk to them who I don't end up talking to at all sometimes because they handle it quite nicely. And I get the feedback from people telling me how much they really appreciate and what a great job they do. Excellent. Okay? Yet still, there are times when things are done where either they will let me know this is what I did, if it was a problem, if I did anything wrong, let me know, or they'll just send somebody towards me because they say, I think it's probably better if you answer the question. And that's good too. It's good to know that we have those kind of things developing and growing within the body. Anybody else? Okay, Deirdre?
I just really want to thank you for that one verse, but he who shall have endured to the end shall be saved. And I came to realize, actually just sitting here listening, yes, there's a lot of things in the world that attack us as believers of Messiah Yeshua and as followers of Torah. But sometimes the attacks can come from within your own selves. And having a very, very rough time this past week. By the way, I would really appreciate it if we could talk later. Yeah, you're right.
Appointment noted. We'll do it during the oneg. Oh,
yes.
I'm sorry, we're not doing that today.
Yeah.
Sorry. Well, it's just like when Rabbi Tom sent the Gadol class to look for Hezekiah chapter 23. Or something like that, We'll have a meeting right during the oneg. Okay, no, right after services sometime we'll definitely meet. Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, so the depression, it just hit hard and heavy, and just preview. And I just ended up crying and going back to things I thought I had just completely and totally, coping mechanisms that I thought I completely and totally said goodbye to. And I had what I call an Elijah moment, like, I'm the only one. And at the end, after all the was over.
That's a technical term, by the way.
Yes, very technical. I learned so much about where I am and what I need to fix and things that were brought to the surface that I had even forgotten about that I know I need to work out. So, because I did cry out, even if it was an Elijah moment, I did cry out. I did endure through the end. And the joy did come. And because of my endurance, I feel that a new salvation is coming on, where I can say goodbye to some stuff and work through some things and become even more like Messiah. And I just really am grateful for that verse, because just sitting here listening, and by the way, Alice, thank you for sleeping so I could listen. It clicked, and it was encouragement, and it was motivation, and I'm so very grateful. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Excellent. Okay, so let's take salvation and turn it back to deliverance. So as a type and shadow, if you endure till the end of whatever you're going through, you will be delivered out of whatever you're going through. So that's a microcosm. That's not what Matthew 24 was specifically talking about. Okay, that was talking from a much more big picture and times thing, but it's still a type and shadow situation of the idea of the one who shall endure whatever it is you're going through shall ultimately be delivered out of what you're going through. What I want to encourage you, if you do tend to have depression issues, you tend to have struggles with those kind of things, you need to really listen to the endure teaching over and over, the baptism of fire teaching over and over, the ones that help explain the process and the pattern. And in there, it always brings you to eventually it all clears up, works out, and turns good if you make it through. The whole thing for you to keep reminding yourself is hang in there, make it through. Okay? And so those are two teachings that would help a lot, I think, is to continually remind you what the endurance is all about and what the baptism of fire, what the trials are all about, what the fire is all about, and going through those fires in your life. So you had a week with some fire in it, and you struggled with some stuff. Well, those teachings could really, so maybe when you're going through those fires, pull those teachings out and listen to them and help you remember that that's why we did those teachings, to give you those encouragements during those times. Okay, anybody else? Okay, bring it back to Robert.
All right, from Nate Taylor. First question. Why was the talent taken from servant 3 and given to servant 1 and not servant 2? Didn't servant 1 and 2 put forth the same effort?
Okay, so I don't really have a good answer for that. I've had that thought myself, and that has come up before. The point that was being made, and he could have easily said both, and he could have picked either one, but the point being made that the one that made the effort got the talent from the one that was taken away from. Why he picked the first one, the one with more, I don't know, okay? It could be kind of like we said, blessed are those in the first resurrection. We have to do more. We have the harder thing, whatever it is. It doesn't say, and I don't have a good answer, so sorry about that, Nate. Good question, all right, because I've thought that same thought, and it's come up, but, I think because he didn't need to mention both to make the point he was making, and it seemed the more obvious, logical thing to give it to the one with 10. So, okay, and Manny just said that technically the one that had more was given, so, but, the point Nate's making is a good one. They each did the most they could do with their own thing, so why was it given to the one with more? It could also be, okay, here's a good answer. I don't know, maybe it's a good answer. Why was the one given 5 and not 2? Because the person, because of their ability, was known to be able to handle 5. So if the guy could handle 5 and then 10, well, maybe he could handle 11 easier than the one who handled 2, could handle 4, could handle 5. Did you follow that? Okay. And so he gave the 1 to the one that had already shown the ability to handle more of the abundance, more of the amount. So that could possibly be the only answer. It would be along with what Manny was trying to say, which is to one who's given much was given more. Okay, so he did well with the much. And again, it had to do with their ability. Maybe he just didn't think the one with the 2 could handle more than 4 at that point. Doesn't say. Anybody else?
Yeah, his second question is mainstream Christianity teaching servant 3 the one talent effort?
Wait, say the mainstream?
Teaching servant 3, the one with 1 talent, effort.
They called him effort?
Are they teaching him effort, I guess? Is it teaching servant 3 effort? I guess it's saying, are they teaching to be like servant 3?
Oh, are they teaching to be like servant 3? They're certainly not telling them to put it in the bank. They don't want to have anything to do with it. So they'd like to bury it and have it go away. I don't know if that's, where I would put Christianity, but, they would like the whole Torah thing to just be put in the past and left in the past and be the end of it. As a matter of fact, we disturbed them greatly because of the growing number of people that are coming into Torah observance, and there are people who are coming out of the churches, and they are not happy with that. They are not happy with that. All right.
Okay. Should the poor have pity and compassion for the rich man that would mistreat them because the rich man will receive punishment?
Look, I think that we need to understand that our status, salvation is not a status, but being rich or poor is a status. Our status doesn't necessarily equal less problems, more peace, more abundance. Abundance isn't money. Abundance, you can have a very poor person that thinks they're very abundant. They've got shalom and joy and love and all the other things. So you might have, compassion and concern for the rich, because the rich have all these things and are missing so many other things because they think that having the wealth covers everything. That happens often, not always. I mean, after all, scripturally, all of our heroes were fairly wealthy. Abraham was wealthy. Yeshua was wealthy. There was a money bag that, Judas was pulling money out of on a regular basis. Nobody was even noticing. I mean, there was so much in it. But the thing is that most wealthy just have more expensive problems, or just have the same problems you do, but just at a nicer address. Okay? And they just show up at their problems in a nicer car. All right? But that doesn't mean the problems are any different. And that's part of the whole partiality thing. Realize that money doesn't have anything to do with the problems you have. You have very depressed people with lots of money. You have very depressed people with no money. You have very depressed people with people in the middle. The money is not the factor that matters, but the wealth is that people would tend to treat a wealthy person maybe more respect or this or honoring, because after all, if they have the wealth, maybe they'll share a little bit with me, or they'll do something for me. It's a selfish way of doing it. We honor the powerful so the powerful might bestow something on us. And we don't honor the poor because the poor can't give you anything. See, that's the mindset. It's a selfish mindset. Why should I honor the poor? They can't do anything for me. Because Yeshua said, as you do to the least of these, my brothers, you do to me. That's why you feed. There's your Matthew, right? The sheep and the goats, and where it talks about when did we ever see you naked or hungry or this or that? Well, when you saw somebody else. So that's why we do these things, because he ultimately can do for us. If we do these things, it's like doing it for him. Okay? Amen. What else you got?
All right. From Elizabeth said, how should Gentiles who are of this correct belief system refer to themselves? Christian does not mean anything anymore. And she doesn't like using believer because everyone claims that as their claims that reference for themselves.
Okay, first you should listen to Discovering Your Identity, okay, which is a multi-part teaching that explains to you who scripturally we're supposed to be. And the reason we call ourselves MTOI is because that's, I think, probably one of the better descriptions. I'm a Messianic, I believe in Messiah, I'm a Messianic Torah observant Israelite. So the name of our organization is how I would describe myself, and that's why we chose the name. Okay? I believe in Messiah. I keep the commandments. I'm Torah observant. And by virtue of that description, I'm Israel. Okay? But not Israel like the world created in 1948. Not Israel from that point of view politically. So I'm not an Israeli from that nationality thing. But I'm a scriptural understanding. I have a scriptural understanding of what the Father calls his people, the children of Israel. His people are always referred to as Israel, ever from the time there was a man whose name got changed to Israel. So when Jacob had his name changed, there forward, everybody has always been called a part of the Commonwealth of Israel. And so I would not call us a Christian. I would not call us a Jew. I would not call us a believer, because nobody knows what that means anyway. That's a Christianese term that's no longer useful because it could mean anything. And that's what frustrates me, because people will tell me, well, I want to, my friend at work, he's a believer. What does that mean?
Even the demons believe, right?
That's right, even the demons believe, exactly. So what does that mean when you tell me your friend is a believer? Are they Torah observant Israelites or are they Christians? Because almost always they're referring to a Christian. Okay, they believe in Messiah. Well, again, the belief is backed up by works. Are they believers according to what we just read in James chapter 2? No. If they're Christians, they're not. So now it's going to go around the internet. A rabbi just said that no Christian's a believer. That's true, according to this definition. Because a believer would be having the works, according to the chapter 2, verse 1, which is the belief of our Master Messiah, which is complete Torah compliance. So when you say believer, what do you mean? Now, Christian means, or most of you mean, someone who believes in the New Testament and the Messiah. So by that definition, yes, they're believers, because that's the definition they're using. So it's a matter of what do we mean by the word believer? All right? Because according to James, you're not a believer unless you are Torah observant. That's what he said. Then you're a believer. What do you believe in? You believe as the Messiah believed, to do everything the Father says. You're a believer in that covenant. So we have to be careful with saying saved, believer, all these terms. These are all terms that are useless because they don't mean the same thing to everybody. So I'm not against the term. I just find them to be more confusing than helpful. So when people ask me what I am, first of all, they really want to understand what I believe. So I tell them the simplest answer is for them, because they're just trying to answer a curious question, is picture a hybrid of Christianity and Judaism. We believe in the Messiah of the New Testament, and we keep the commandments of the Old Testament. That's the simplest answer, because they don't want anything more complicated than that, and normally don't ask me any more questions. They want to know what box to put me in. Okay? And they don't know what box to put me in, because I'm different than what they can't put me in the Christian box, and they can't put me in the Jewish box. They don't know where to do it. So I try to explain. We believe everything from Genesis to Revelation, and we observe the commandments. And we believe the Messiah that's described in the New Testament. So I don't mind saying we're a hybrid of Christianity and Judaism, because that makes sense to them. It answers their question. Now, to someone, if you want to know how I would describe myself to all of you guys, I'm a Torah observant Israelite. See, but if I just say that without the Messianic part, a Jew may just think that means I'm a Torah observant Jew, because the Messiah is not brought into that. So I'm a Messianic Torah observant Israelite. And in case you're ever confused, just pick out your coin and look at it. It says it right on the coin what you are. You're a Messianic Torah observant Israel. Okay? Then you'll know. It's so funny. That went through the men's Marco Polo group like months ago, where people were like, well, I don't know. What do you tell people? What do you say? And somebody finally said, well, I just take out the coin. It's right there, in case you don't know what. It's like brilliant. Coin sales went up right away. Some of the guys who didn't have them, we don't need to do that to get them to buy them. We just keep scratching our beards at them until they buy one, And guilt them into it. Yeah, we're going to work on that. The ladies want to know where their necklaces are. I got to talk to the mint that makes them about making one the right size and finding out how we can get a clasp to put on it so that you can have one on a chain. So we are looking at that. I got to find out what the right size is for that, So if anybody wants to, who does jewelry, Diana or somebody wants to do give us an idea of what a good size would be compared to a coin. Like, would it be okay the size of a nickel, or would it be what size? How big would it be to be appropriate on on a chain, okay? So I don't know how big or small to make that, and then we could talk to the Mint about that. Okay, any more questions over there, Robert? Okay, so Nate's clarification, this is coming from Robert without a microphone, but was that, like the third servant, they believe in Messiah, but they don't do anything with it. Not that they don't do anything. I mean, they do what they do that as to the limited amount that they understand, but they don't do what was meant to be done with it, okay? What was meant to be done with it was to become a more complete Torah observant Israelite. In other words, understanding the truth, the mechanics, with the spirit, the fullness of the intent, and putting it all together. Yeshua came to help us to get past just the mechanics simply enough, but to add to it the fullness. And that's what is meant to be done with it. All right, so now we're going to be done with this. We're done. Shabbat Shalom! Shavua Tov! Oh yeah, wait, we got them on both sides. There we go. Thank you.